They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you.
Did the video get canceled? We're good to go? Welcome. Welcome everybody to Napoleon Hill Institute training. I'm David Meltzer, and today is a great training with my great mentor, the incredible Blaine Bartlett. We're going to talk about judgment versus discernment. BlaineBartlett.com. He's helping so many and millions move possibilities in reality. Blaine, how you feeling there, brother?
Hey, I'm recovering.
Well, good. I know we had a communication faux pas. We all thought you didn't have the time, meaning you couldn't make it to our training, but you didn't actually have the time of the training, which is awesome. So we are blessed to be here today. And, you know, there is a difference between judgment and discernment. And as I explored this training about that discernment of the judgment and discernment, I really saw where people fall down today. And they really don't see how judgment itself is truly the modern problem of the ego. And when I say that, Blaine, the ego originally, as it's evolved, was to protect bodies. I always say a saber-toothed tiger was coming across a cave, and we wanted to protect our body. So, you know, the ego would evoke, you know, all of this reaction to protect ourselves. And then it moved to our thoughts, our mind, and we came up with, you know, a need to be right and offended, separate, anxious, frustrated, angry, guilty, and resentful to protect ourselves from what we think people think or what we think we think. And that was a evolution, and it got more and more to me elusive. And then today, especially with social media and technology, it's evolved past the thoughts. It's really a perceived identity, an illusion that doesn't even exist. And so the way we see the world, the meaning that we give the world determines, as you've taught me, the results that we create. And if anybody would like exercises and guides from today, please email me directly, David@dmeltzer.com. David means beloved. D is my first initial. Meltzer means servant. David@dmeltzer.com. But when we operate from judgment, we limit awareness. We drain or interfere with our energy, and we create unnecessary resistance to the infinite potential that we have, our higher self, closest to God. And when we operate instead, though, from discernment, we expand what we see. We give a meaning aligned with the divine, and we improve how we not only decide on things, but accelerate how we execute on them as well. We've all, Blaine, been in situations where we reacted out of ego to either a body threat, a mind threat, or a perceived identity threat way too quickly. We labeled a meaning onto something as wrong or bad, or we let emotions drive these decisions that we, of course, later had to fix. Why forgiveness is so much a part of what we do is because we utilize judgment, not discernment, and allow the ego to react to the body, the mind threat, or the perceived identity threat that so many of us fall into the trap of. And in these same moments, if we had just stopped and breathed and simply asked, what is actually happening here?
Yeah.
The outcomes could have been completely different. So as we discuss these lessons today, we don't need more information, that's for sure, to succeed. We need to see the same information more clearly, which you help people do so often. As we move through this training, which is available to everyone, David@dmeltzer.com, we commit to awareness. We commit to discernment. We commit to observing instead of reacting. We commit to being a witness to the consciousness separating itself as a subconsciousness, questioning instead of labeling things and giving it a meaning, interfering with, giving it a meaning instead that is in the divine direction of where we want to be or better by choosing alignment over impulse. And this is how we shift from judgment and interfering capacity and capability to discernment. I look forward, as I mentioned, to getting everybody this training, guides, and exercises, the replays, David@dmeltzer.com. Lesson number one, question number one, is this core distinction, the game we're actually playing between judgment and discernment. And so when I talk about that difference, and as we operate between interference and flow, the judgmental reaction and the emotional interference that limits us, compared to when we discern and elevate our witness, our awareness to move efficiently, effectively, to be successful forward. What comes to mind for you as we differentiate between judgment and discernment?
Well, and I love that question. And I love this topic. If you look at just, kind of the way that psychotherapy works today, and not that this is going to be a therapeutic conversation at all.
With me, it needs to be, so thank you.
Yeah, exactly. The most prescribed type of, psychotherapy in America today is, cognitive behavioral therapy. And what's interesting about that is the foundational seed of that came out of something that Epictetus said, Stoic philosopher. It's not the things that trouble us, but our judgments about things. And that goes back a couple thousand years. So this distinction between judgment and discernment is not only powerful, it's long lasting. It has stood the test of time. And the most success, when you start looking at going back to first principles, that's one of the ways that we actually find enhance our ability to go back to first principles, which is the one of the foundational pieces of long-term success, is by being able to make that adjustment. Judgments, good, bad, right, wrong, they are limiting by definition.
so true. And, when we use discernment, we are witnessing and elevating our awareness and elevating alignment, own time and risk tolerance, where judgment is a reaction of some sort of contextual feeling that usually is motivated or inspired by the ego. And to that measure, judgment blocks the flow. It interferes with it, and it's discernment that causes that interference. So the simple exercise of stopping, dropping, and rolling, to take time when we react in judgment, to stop and breathe, and what I call remind, remember, and recollect with the source, with God, and replace those emotional labels of judgment with the natural observation, awareness, and witness, with intentionality, the questions that will determine how we service value to others, what we like and don't like, what's working, what's not working, what we know and what we don't know. There is a core distinction in the game that we're playing, the meaning that we give that game through discernment or judgment. If you like that stop, drop, and roll exercises or the guides exercises, David at Meltzer.com. Now, the second lesson I want to talk to you about, as we both are getting longer in the tooth, is the cost, the emotional expense of judgment, and the impact of feeling stuck that is contingent and aligned with this expense, this emotional expense. Judgment, as I mentioned, creates interference, and that resistance, it lengthens the lapse of time between the problem and the solution. It distorts how we see opportunities, it touches a favor. So many of us that use judgment feel punished, not protected, promoted, love, and perfected. It's easy to say, Blaine, that when we resist, that it's easy to say, oh, just stop and drop and roll, just let it go. But it's emotionally difficult, and it's not simple. Have you learned any tricks or advice to give people when they emotionally react with judgment to come back and shorten the distance of resistance that they create?
I have. And the simple one has to do with just the nature of being right. Most people on this planet would rather be right than get what they say they want. I mean, and that's just universally true. I'd rather be right. And right is rooted in value systems. It's rooted in core belief systems. It's rooted in family of origin, material. I mean, and it's all conspired to create this thing that we call mindset or paradigm. So one of the easiest ways, quote unquote, easiest ways, is to be able to, and this is where discernment comes in, to be able to separate my need to be right from what it is that I say I want. A great example of this in a marriage. I say I want a loving, nurturing, respectful relationship with my wife. And then I start arguing about who squeezed the toothpaste tube in the wrong place.
Right.
And it's, which is, by the way, the right place. And those sorts of arguments, they're all values based. Right, wrong, good, bad. That comes into play very strongly.
It's so smart. I remember traveling for 22 days in Korea when I was running Samsung's data phone division, and every day lonely, telling myself how much I missed and loved my wife, missed and loved my children. And from LAX, from Korea, after 22 days, and back then there was no FaceTime, it was Skype, right. And it was difficult. And so, every day I had a hole in my heart, a hole in my stomach. I couldn't even describe to you, as you've traveled when you were younger with a family as well, you know what that feels like. But I came home and there was shoes on the stairs. And the very first thing out of my mouth was, are you fucking kidding me? Who left the shoes on the stairs? Yeah. And I ruined everything. In that moment, as I got older and realized that the need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be separate, the need to be superior, anxious, frustrated, angry, guilty, and resentful do nothing but accelerate judgment and accelerate us in the wrong trajectory. And that lesson of, I love, a lot of people say it's better to be kind than right, but that's not really what it is. I think it's better to get what you desire, your divine, it's better to be in your divine direction than be right. And forgiveness plays an important part in that. And I was curious, you know, when we forgive, you know, what's that mindset for you? Because it's really not the person who left the shoes on the stairs or the toothpaste wrong. You got to forgive yourself for being an idiot and giving shits about the shoes or the toothpaste when all you've done is had a hole in your heart about how much you miss your family, and you ruined it with this need to be right, offended, or separate.
Yep. You know, it's so true. That, I mean, I wrote a book with Brian Tracy. Oh goodness gracious, a couple of other folks here. Stephen Covey. Yeah, sometimes, Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy, Ken Blanchard,
all legends. Jack
and part of what I actually contributed to this book was a whole conversation around discernment, and that idea of well, where I landed. I'll just put it this way: where I landed was literally a metaphysical realization. There's nobody out there but me. So the idea of forgiveness. Who put these damn shoes on the stairs? I get all upset about that. And all I'm upset with is my belief systems about where those shoes should be. So to your point, I need to forgive myself. When I can begin to forgive myself and let go of my attachment to my need to be right, now I have an opening to actually experience much closer connection to what I say I want, which is that, that joy, love, and experience with my wife or my kids or fill in the blank.
Yeah. And there's a, energetic and genetic inheritance of self-sabotage of, I'm going to pick anything out so that I'm not vulnerable and honest about how much that person cares about me. Because if they really knew how big of a hole in their heart it created, they may leave like other people have. Yeah. And I expose that fear, this ego-based fear that, I feel so strongly about my family. And because my dad left when I was 5 or people pass or whatever it is, you get into this subconscious thing about, I'm going to screw this all up, because the last thing I want to do is to expose myself of how much I really love them, because it's going to hurt me. They're going to manipulate me. They're going to take advantage of me. And it took me years. Exactly. Very valuable lesson. I hope everybody got that. If you didn't, watch the replay, get the exercises and guides in how forgiveness can help us to understand and shorten the distance of resistance and the emotional expense of judgment. David at dmeltzer.com. The third lesson I want to discuss with you is the power, as we touched on it, of discernment. How we operate closest to God, how we operate closest to our potential, how we continue to ignore the evidence and the evidence contrary to where we want to be. And it's discernment that allows us to witness or observe data without emotional attachment, and act intentionally, as I just described, a personal self-sabotage where accuracy, timing, and alignment actually come from, instead of labeling things. I always say, only thing for labels is shampoo. And as I get older, the less I need. Unlike you, who still needs a lot of shampoo. This idea of labeling, how do we stop judging and increase our accuracy of how we operate at our highest self and utilize the power of discernment?
That question goes directly to the core of what most people wrestle with, and it's the separation of, it literally is duality. Ego gets built, and it separates. As ego is built, it separates us from what you and I can call source, spirit, whatever it is that actually brings life to who I am and what I do. There's a spirit that's moving to and through all of us all the time. And the ability to become quiet, this is what discernment actually creates. In Buddhistic philosophy, the activity of discernment is simply awareness. It's about a noticing without assigning meaning to what I notice. I just notice, which when you back that up, it's essentially what happens in meditation. I just notice. And when I can become quiet, silence is not the absence of noise. Silence is the absence of self. And when I can become quiet and myself isn't, the ego self isn't creating all kinds of noise, then I can apprehend, I can experience, I can see, I can, kind of grok that piece that wants to be expressed most fully through this bag of skin that I call Blaine. I get to do something, but it's the spirit that wants to come through, and I inhibit it with judgment.
And that's so good, because silence creates space, and space is where the music is made. If all you had was sound, there'd be music. It's actually the space between the notes that creates the music, and it's a space between our thoughts that create the materialization, the monetization, the information. If you didn't have space, there'd be no place for information. And as we elevate our awareness with the appropriate information by aligning it in the divine created by our own divine direction, our own desire to be what we must be, or to be where we think we want to be, or even better, is that pause, that stopping, that space, that silence that allows our vessels to inform ourselves and to be better witnesses to the bag of bones and skin that make up Blaine and make up David. And it's so important to understand there's where we operate at our best, that we choose curiosity and humility over certainty, knowing they're whole or we're about to be, that the longer we go, the less we know. And so curiosity is the power of discernment, with focus on data over drama. And we make decisions based on what we see, what we witness, not the reaction, the feeling of reaction to that, the emotional expense. And we put our power in discernment, not into data, not into judgment of emotion, and put that energy in motion. So we increase our accuracy. If you'd like the lesson of the power of discernment and operating at your potential, email me, david@dmeltzer.com. Leading into the fourth lesson in discernment versus judgment, our own internal ego, our own operating system is really where this lives. And I mentioned the evolution of the ego, and our outcomes are driven by the voice we follow, which is our ego or the witness, awareness. And we create these reactions, and one creates reactions, the ego and judgment, the other creates alignment of witnessing. And the way that I describe this to people, and the analogy that I can give them, is watching TV. When we're immersed in a TV show, there's one consciousness. When the commercial comes on, we're witnessing a consciousness, and then we start to realize there's 1,000 other channels and 1,000 other consciousnesses as well. But it is all going on at one time, one single consciousness. And if we allow the ego to separate us and to react emotionally, we can create this interference where our awareness, or the witness of the TV show, allows us to observe, understand, and choose intentionality in our divine directions. We are not our thoughts. We have the power to observe our thoughts, though. This relationship of thinking and thoughts, and the differentiator between the way we think and feel with the way we witness or aware of, in the realm of intentionality. How do you create space between the stimulus and the response, and understanding the pattern of choices that we make with choosing alignment over impulse?
Again, I mean, I love these questions today. They are actually positioning, I think, what Napoleon Hill talked about when he wrote Outwitting the Devil. The cause of drifting is we don't pay attention to that internal voice that says, here's the direction in which you need to be heading. Here are the acts that you need to be engaging with. We get all the noise, all the channels that are coming.
This purpose, which 98% of people lack.
Exactly. It's that clarity of purpose and then the desire.
Yeah. And in your life, you had so much success and so many lessons to achieve that success. Were there times where you drifted?
Oh.
And looking back.
Yep.
And at whatever age it was, what were some of the interferences that were deterring you from having a definiteness of purpose? For me, it was ego-based. I was trying to fill a God-sized hole with everything but God. So, I had such an elevated existence that when I wasn't getting the attention that I was used to, I would use, drugs and alcohol to mirror this feeling that I got when I was doing big deals, making big money, being on big stages. And that was a really bad drifting part. And I think Napoleon Hill, he doesn't go into it much, but if you look at his history, he had a lot of drifting. And
yes, he did.
He almost, that when you listen to Outwitting the Devil, he can only tell that story because he knows that he almost ended up drifting his entire life. And, every saint like Napoleon Hill has a past, and every criminal also has a future. And so this discernment of what he has written, because some people are judgmental about Napoleon Hill because he was human and he drifted. But he didn't. Yeah. He won't be able to write all the cool shit that he's written that has changed millions of people's lives, including mine.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get that kind of learning by reading about it in somebody else's book. You actually have to live that experience. It's kind of, oh, that's what he meant. I get it now. Yeah, that's sort of a thing. I mean, I remember, I've been married before, and my first marriage, I remember this distinctly. My best man, as I was walking down the aisle, he's going, "It's not too late to not do this."
Yes.
and that comment came out of conversations that he and I had about, I'm not sure this is, but I was getting married because I had, all of the approval, the invitations were out, the guests were assembled. I mean, so other people's approval. So if you ask, kind of what was a catalyst for me drifting early on in my life, it was the need for other people to approve and my fear of how they would think of me if I didn't do what I, all of that stuff.
Good. FOMO and FOPO is one of the
Exactly.
greatest lessons. I've learned the JOMO and JOPO, which took me, a long time, the joy of missing out and the joy of other people's opinion. And if anybody wants the JOPO and JOMO lessons, David at dmeltzer.com. Lesson number 5, as we stay on pace, is there's a practical framework. We talk about stop, dropping, and rolling, pausing, canceling out the negative things we say, do, think, feel, and believe, clearing our subconscious mind, even connecting to source and clearing interference through discernment. But without a system, judgment, will be the automatic response. And so how important it is, not just with discernment versus judgment, but how important are systems, frameworks to allow us to expand, grow, and accelerate in the human experience.
People are successful not because they had a great idea, but because they had a structure and a system that allowed for them to actually achieve what it was that they said they wanted to have. Without a structure and a system, it's real easy to just drift. I'm going to go back in time again here. Marcus Aurelius, he wrote Meditations. He's a Roman emperor. He had a nightly practice: review the day, differentiate the events that happened in the day from my interpretation of the days, evaluate whether my response at that point in time was proportional, and then let go of it. Tomorrow's a new day. So review the day, do it without judgment, and then differentiate the events from my interpretation of the event. The event was the event. It's my interpretation, going back to Epictetus. It's my judgment that causes me to think that I'm in trouble. All of that stuff. So he had a system, and he worked that system daily for his entire adult life while he was the emperor of Rome.
That's so good, which is relative to the non-negotiable behaviors and utilizing, canceling, clearing, and connecting. If anybody wants that exercise on how to cancel, clear, connect, if you'd like the replay, if you'd like playing to develop a framework and a system for your life to understand what's happening in it, what we can learn from it, and how we can use what we do to create power in the moment through awareness and discernment. Email me, david@dmeltzer.com. The final lesson before we get into the Q&A with you, Blaine, is the freedom formula that I have developed, which again, anybody can get, david@dmeltzer.com, because it allows us, this formula, to scale with clarity, balance, harmony. It allows us to release judgment, increase the energy, intuition, intelligence, inspiration we have by decreasing the interference through awareness, creating the results we desire faster and better than we could even desire them. And this is how businesses and life scales with consistency. This freedom formula, being able to clear the interference and create alignment and abundance for you. Is there a formula that you use? You mentioned Marcus Aurelius, but what's your formula for freedom?
I mentioned Marcus Aurelius because I actually work with that material, and I've worked with it for years. I have literally adopted that. And, it's interesting. Neville Goddard also speaks about essentially the same sort of thing. Review the day. Notice where you made judgments that weren't serving you. And part of that has to do with just, paying attention. The idea of discernment is just becoming aware of what's happening in my life. I start noticing patterns, and that's the key to it. When I do that daily or that evening review, if I'm really diligent about it, I start noticing patterns. And that's the whole idea. So if I can interrupt a pattern, I can introduce something new. Until I'm aware that the pattern is running, whatever I try to do is going to get kicked out by the pattern.
Yeah, we got to look for clues through gratitude. The clues are formed by finding the light, the love, and the lessons. We mentioned the forgiveness that is necessary to create the ease, knowing that we're made from those mistakes. And when we find the light, the love, and the lessons, we need to forgive ourselves for making those mistakes. But it's accountability within the context of the freedom formula, with the clues, the patterns, and the choices that we make. It's the accountability that says in our nightly review, what I call an unwinding routine, as I look at how I perform with non-negotiable and negotiable behaviors, circumstantial and uncircumstantial, paid and unpaid, planned and unplanned, and preparing for the recovery and access to information during my sleep. It is that formula of understanding for me, the idea of what did I do? What did I do to be accountable? What did I do to be track this? What did I do to participate in the perception of it? And most importantly, what am I supposed to learn from so I can live tomorrow at a higher level, a higher frequency and vibration, a higher level of awareness, to be more grateful, more forgiving, and more accountable each and every day. And we practice letting go of judgment every single day. We act with clarity, balance, harmony, and focus, stay aligned with what we see, and trust the process, with the enjoyment of the consistent, everyday, persistent, without quit pursuit of our potential with a definiteness of purpose. Before I let you go, Blaine, and take Q&A, it is mastering judgment versus discernment is not a one-time shift. It's a daily practice that directly impacts our energy, intuition, inspiration, our relationships, our decisions, and our outcomes. Every day we are presented with moments where we can either react emotionally or respond intentionally. The people who grow, scale, and succeed at the highest level aren't free from challenges, struggles, or pain. They just shorten the lapse of time between the problems and the solutions. That's why we call them the resolution, the resolution. They simply see them more clearly and act with alignment, with greater purpose and passion. Our success is not determined by what happens to us. It's not happens for us, but it happens through us. It's determined by how clearly we see it and how intentionally we respond. We all commit to catching judgment in real time. We pause, create space, and choose discernment over judgment. We act from clarity. We trust the process and systems and allow alignment to compound, accelerate, and aggregate over time. This is how we utilize discernment versus judgment. If you like the exercises, the guides, and my books, I'll sign them, send them, pay for shipping, and the book It's David means beloved. At D, my first initial. Meltzer means waiter or servant. Let me be your beloved servant. Email me, david@dmeltzer.com. God bless you, Blaine. God bless, of course, Napoleon Hill Institute. I'm so blessed that you're staying on to answer questions. Thank you so much for joining me.
You bet, my friend. I love doing this. Great to see you.
Be healthy, be happy, send my love. Thank you,
Okay,
Gigi.
you got
Go
it.
get him, Blaine. All right, take it over.
Hey, Nick, take me home here.
Is Nick sleeping?
There we are. Okay, got you there.
Is Nick here? Nick, wait, hold on. What's going on? Oh, there he is.
Let me.
Are you sleeping on the job, Nick? What's going
Blaine,
on?
you can hear me on Clubhouse, correct?
I can hear you on Clubhouse now. Yeah, I just logged in there.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Perfect. I'm going to leave Blaine here. I'm going to leave you on the webinar so that we don't get the interference between us both feeding in on Clubhouse, talking over one another, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to go ahead and patch your audio through so everybody on the webinar can hear us, just go ahead and unmute yourself and I'll remove myself here, okay?
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that. There we go.
Beautiful. All right, so now we are rocking and rolling, and I'm going to do a quick reset of the room here, as this has been the Napoleon Hill Institute training with the chairman of the Institute, Mr. David Meltzer, and of course our very special guest, the double B, Blaine Bartlett, is of course the godfather of our mentorship tree here. And now as we are going to open it up here for the next probably 15 or 20 minutes to rock and roll with some Q&A with Blaine. As a reminder to everybody that's joining us here today, if you would like to guide an exercise from today's training, all you need to do is email David directly, david@dmeltzer.com. Once again, that is just david@dmeltzer.com. And Blaine, real quick, why don't you share where everybody can get in touch with you as well, as I know both from the training as well from this Q&A that people are going to have continuous questions.
Yeah, easiest is my LinkedIn. It's Blaine Bartlett, but also my website, blainebartlett.com. And email is Blaine@avatar-resources.com, which is my company.
Perfect. And so as we continue forward here, I see that we got all of our friends joining us on Clubhouse. So for the first question of the day, I'm going to pass it over to the incredible Marco Antonio. Marco, my friend, it's always good to see you here. Why don't you unmute yourself and kick us off the first question?
Likewise, Nick. Glad to be here. Thank you, Blaine. Thank you, David. You know, it was really cool to hear you guys talk about Napoleon Hill drifting. Glad to know I'm not the only one. But, you know, my question was in regards to, you know, sometimes emotions can cloud my judgment and decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what role do emotions play in distorting discernment? And how do you personally regulate that in high stakes situations?
Great question, Marco.
Thank you, Blaine.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. What I'm interested in when I notice myself getting emotionally triggered is, what was the trigger? What was the trigger? So I want to go deeper than he cut me off in traffic. Okay, that may be the most visible piece, but what's underneath that? So when I can begin, and this is kind of that evening review that I talked about just a bit ago. When I begin to review these things, I start noticing patterns. And it seems, just taking that example, if that sort of an event keeps showing up and I keep having essentially the same emotional reaction, there's an underlying trigger that I want to get my hands around, because until I do, it's going to continue running. And it will be running me instead of me being in front of it, if that makes sense. So there's a piece of introspection that comes into play with that. You have to be willing to just kind of step back and this is the idea of discernment. Don't judge it. Just kind of go, that's interesting. I get triggered when that happens. Where did that come from? Can I find the first source of that? And then just kind of pull it apart and see what might be there. If you can do that successfully, oftentimes what you're going to find, most of the time what you're going to find, is a legacy piece of a legacy event that the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old, the 12-year-old made some meaning up about, that is no longer valid. And when you can begin to recognize that the validity is no longer there, you can actually let go of it, and it won't have the same hold on you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marco, for our first question of the day. And Mr. Blaine, just as a kind reminder, as we get our questions, make sure to unmute yourself on Clubhouse as well for the answers so that everybody can obviously hear all the goodness of wisdom that you are going to be dropping today. But for our next question, I'm going to pass it over to Allie, who's been patiently waiting here on stage. So Allie, it's great to see you. Happy Wednesday. What do you got for us?
Happy Wednesday. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Blaine and David, for an incredible training as always. Question for you is, have you ever forgiven someone intellectually, but realized emotionally it was still stored in your system? And how did you move beyond that layer?
Lovely question. Yes, is the short answer. Long ago, I got real clear about the power of forgiveness. And that being said, as long as it still had a hold on me emotionally, forgiveness had not occurred. Forgiveness, in the way that it actually works from a dynamic perspective, can move into territory that is called I forget as well. And what I mean by forget is I begin to literally forget the perceived emotional trauma that was associated with it. And I begin to think of it in terms of, well, it's just something that happened. And it's that absence of emotional attachment that literally lends itself to true forgiveness, if that makes sense. So where people get in trouble, I think, around this question of forgiveness, Allie, is they think that we're actually forgiving something or somebody out there. It's all about me. There's nobody out there but me. There's no thing out there but me. So ultimately what I'm doing is I'm forgiving myself for whatever transgression I have imagined occurred. I'm forgiving myself for putting myself in that position. I'm forgiving myself for whatever it might be. And in that act of truly forgiving, I begin to forget the emotional attachment. I don't forget the event necessarily, but I forget it in the sense of emotionally attaching meaning to it that may have been relevant back at that moment, but it is no longer relevant today. No longer relevant today. And as long as I carry it forward, I'm going to be, essentially creating future iterations of the same event. This is where the notion of patterns come into play. As long as I'm bringing my past into my present, it's going to show up in my future. So there is a lineage that comes into play here. And a large part of it is rooted in the emotional letting go.
It's powerful. Thank you. A lot to unpack. Appreciate you always.
Thank you, Ali.
Beautiful. And Blaine, I want to make sure to show some love to the chat as we have a question that's coming in from the Queen of Curiosity, which is Colleen, who I know is someone you hold very near and dear to your heart. And her question for you today is, why do people often confuse familiarity with inevitability?
Familiarity with inevitability. That's an interesting question.
That's why she's the queen.
I haven't thought about that in that way, Colleen. Familiarity. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the chat, if you could give me a little bit bigger thread to work with there. I've got an idea of where you're going with it. But
I was going to say, I know that she is a little bit on the go.
Okay.
She's in the chat and not live, but let me get some additional clarity from her. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Malad, who is waiting patiently here on stage on Clubhouse. So Malad, good to see you, my friend. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask away?
Appreciate you, Mr. Glazer, Mr. Bartlett. Hope you are doing well.
Thank you.
So my friends and I have recently been discussing our futures. We are all a few weeks away from graduation. And I wanted to come and maybe get some perspective from you, but we're all discussing the term comfortability. We're all pretty comfortable with what we're doing right now. We're making just enough. And it's kind of weird because we're trying to see if now that we're going to, move on from school, if we should take that next big step, or if we should just relax and kind of enjoy the comfort right now. But I wanted to hear perspective from, you or other professional individuals that could tell me anything that could give us some positive direction or any direction at all.
Comfort is very seductive. It's comfort, honestly, Milad, is very dangerous because it is so seductive. The organism that I call myself is living, breathing organism. It values comfort. It values safety. It values, those sorts of things that don't stress it. If you can kind of put it in that context. The problem with it is there's no growth. Yeah. When things are comfortable, I'm not growing. There's no growing edge, to come into play here. And that isn't to say that I, shouldn't take time off and just kind of go, I'm going to just enjoy this right now, particularly coming out of school as you are. That's a time to just kind of go, okay, let's acknowledge this. Let's kind of settle into and have a little bit of reverie about what we've just accomplished. And there's an and that comes into this. Don't get settled in it. You've got to be particularly mindful that seductive nature will, and this is what Napoleon Hill talks about when he's talking about drifting. It's very seductive to, kind of settle in. And people will look up 30 years down the road and they find themselves in a rut. And a rut is nothing more than a coffin with the end kicked out. They haven't grown appreciably in their lives. They haven't, names and faces have changed to protect the innocent, but that's about the only thing that's changed in their lives. So you want to be mindful of, there's a balance. I want to, take time to enjoy, but I also want to look for where's that next edge? What needs to happen here for me that will cause me to be better than I was yesterday? I want to find ways to continuously be better in some small way than I was yesterday. And that will, that will stretch me. It'll cause me to be uncomfortable.
I appreciate you. And actually, I wanted to say we got this, we started talking a little bit when we saw your post about the problem isn't strategy, it's consciousness. Stop drifting, start living. Because, we're really good at planning and we're really good at making some strategies and things to do. But then it comes down to that actual, putting it into action. And we start to plan for future strategies and future plans, and we kind of leave everything that we planned in the past.
Yeah.
So
good stuff.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, love the journey you're on. Congratulations on graduating.
Thank you, sir.
We are always proud of you, Milad, and we always have your back, especially as you continue to do your best, learn lessons, and have fun while you do it. So we shout out to you and give you nothing but love. And as we continue on with this Q&A session, officially entering into what is the fourth quarter, as we got about 14 minutes here as we wrap things up, I want to go ahead and kick it over to Robin for the next question of the day. So Robin, it is always good to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you unmute yourself and keep us rolling with the next question?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nick. Hi, Blaine.
Hi, Robin.
It's good to talk with you again. I just wanted to mention that I still use your tomato analogy for discernment from our Zoom call ways back.
Oh, good. Good.
But anyway, so my question today is I recognize that I am a creator, that the creator, the ideas are flowing all the time. I'm looking to really make that hard shift into execution and implementing those systems. What can you say to help me keep up with that as far as daily or weekly check-ins to make sure that I don't drift back over to the creator side and I can, I might fizzle out with that momentum to actually execute the vision and the business systems and not get lost in all the additional features in that implementation.
I love the question. Squirrel. Okay. And all of a sudden I go running off into that direction. Developing a certain muscle will be useful here. And that muscle is learning how to say no. Learning how to say no. FOMO is it's a real deal. Steve Jobs talked about how I'll butcher his way of describing this, but essentially what he was saying was he wasn't going to be successful until he learned how to say no. And he said that we end up saying no far more than we say yes in this organization. And this was after he came back to Apple, after he'd been fired, and that whole history. But saying no is about focus. Jeff Bezos is the same sort of a character in this regard. One of his early employees said, "Jeff, you've got to stop coming up with these ideas. You're driving us crazy. There's no focus. You got us running all over the place here. Learn to say no." So for you, Robin, once you decide on a path for execution, set yourself up, and this is what I would suggest. Put it to literally a morning to-do list together that is execution oriented. It's got 3 things on it. You do nothing but those 3 things during that day, and until and nothing gets added to that list until those 3 things are done. Now, it may take you a couple of days to do it. It may take you a week to do all 3 of them, but as soon as one of them goes off, the next priority item comes in that is in alignment with and consistent with producing the results you want. So that's where execution comes into play here. Partly the distraction comes into play when we've got so many things that we could be doing. So you want to narrow the frame down. So what's the 1, 2, or 3 things that I could actually legitimately do today that will move the needle for me? And I do nothing except that. And as soon as that one's accomplished, the next one moves up to number 1 slot. So that's kind of how you keep yourself on track. There will come a time where squirrel is useful, and you pay attention to that one the next time around. But until you can get that executional piece in play here, and do it in a way that allows you to begin to develop a sense of habit around it, so that it doesn't become something that it feels like an add-on. It's just now something that you've learned how to do in service of making this idea a manifestable reality.
Awesome. Thank you, Blaine.
You bet, Robin.
Thank you, Robin. And for our next question here, as we continue on, I'm going to pull one from the chat from our friend Jennifer, who is asking Blaine, do you have a go-to way of canceling negative thoughts or emotions when you notice them really aggregating together and almost creating a bottleneck?
Yeah. I'm going to just crib something, steal something from my friend Mary Morrissey. Mary's got this delightful little way of illustrating this. She says, when that thought comes up, I literally, and she does this, she stomps her foot and she says, "Not now." And she will physically move her hand across her face, just kind of moving it out of her mind. Not now. This is not the time or place. And that swish, and it is a swish pattern in neurolinguistics. You'll hear them reference a swish pattern. What you're doing is literally changing state. It's the attachment to the negative thought that gives you the difficulty. So you want to decouple it as quickly as you can. When you notice it, not now. This isn't appropriate now. I'm not going to have that thought now. And it doesn't deny that the thought is there. It's just moving it through. You don't want it to take root. So physiologically, every one of us has got a body. We can all work with our bodies. So literally from a physiological perspective, that swish movement, you'd be surprised at how effective it is in impacting the mental process. Physiology, how I describe something determines how I feel about it. How I feel about something determines my behavior. I can do this in reverse. My behavior will shift how I feel about something, which will move it out of my mind or move it into my mind, depending on how I want to work with it. So just kind of play with that a little bit. It doesn't have to be a real hard thing to do. You can actually make it kind of enjoyable.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Blaine. And, as we are coming into the final question here, which I am not afraid to be selfish and take it myself, because any opportunity I can have to learn from the double B, it is a blessing to say the least. And the final question I want to ask you, Blaine, is especially related to today's training, which I think is, extremely applicable. And I know that through a lot of the clients that you work with, this is something that comes up in a lot of the mentorship and the coaching that you do. But in alignment with today's training, is there any specific lesson that is really resonating with you right now, or even a takeaway from the last week? Because as you know, I am somebody that is a sponge, to say the least. I am always absorbing as much value and, of course, as many lessons as I can. And I can't think of anybody better to turn to, of course, than yourself in terms of making sure that I'm up to date on what's resonating with you the most.
Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you. And it's an interesting question. What's resonating with me right now? Yeah, I carry a coin in my pocket, and I have for years. And it's literally a Stoic phrase. Memento mori. And many of you may be familiar with the term memento mori. Remember, I must die. Remember, you must die. So, I had some heart surgery yesterday. Minimal. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. But I've got holes in my body right now where they poked different things in, and everything's fine. It's all good. It's working well, but it's an indication that mortality is not an abstraction. And what I'm working with right now has to do with, and this is something that is ongoing for me, finding ways to be more in the moment than not in the moment. And it's a lifelong journey, but just kind of practicing. What do I need to be paying attention to today? What's distracting me? How do I know when I'm in the moment, so to speak? So there's a question about flow state that comes into play that I'm playing with. I'm treating it more as a game, I think, than anything else. I'm just kind of paying attention to it. And being playful with it. Memento mori. I'm not getting out of here alive. And while I'm here, there's an old phrase that I learned years ago. If I'm skating on thin ice, I may as well dance. So what I'm paying attention to right now is, how can I dance more fully? How can I dance more fully? With Cynthia, with my writing, with the teaching I'm doing, how can I dance more fully? And I'm actually enjoying it. It's not heavy at all. It's actually kind of laughing, not laughable, but laughing as an ongoing verb.
That's fantastic. Well, Blaine, I want to thank you again for not only taking the time to be a part of these incredible trainings as our special guest and special mentor, but more so for the way that you continue to always show up for our community and pour in the way that you do. I know David will never be able to, as well as myself and the team, will never be able to properly thank you enough. But I think in great turn, the thank you comes from planting those seeds under trees that you never know when you will sit under. So we want to thank you for your incredible wisdom, your guidance, and your insight. Please remind everybody one more time. I know they can get in touch with you at blainebartlett.com, but where else can people reach out to you?
LinkedIn. You can send me just message me on LinkedIn. That's pretty simple to do. Or Blaine at avatar-resources.com, which is my company. avatar-resources.com.
Beautiful. Well, I know that we will be seeing you again here with the next weeks to come of the Napoleon Hill Institute training series. I'm going to go ahead and close out today's sessions and invite but not obligate everybody to come and join us. But before I do, any final words that you want to share, Mr. Blaine?
I always end something like this with the admonition to pay attention to nature. Everything in nature is the center of distribution in some way, shape, or form. Nothing in nature serves as a center of accumulation. So find a way to act like you're a part of nature. Go distribute something. Be That's a center beautiful. Of distribution in your life. Give away a hug, a smile, tip the bill, whatever it might be, but make a difference in somebody's lives.
Oh, I love it, Blaine. Well, thank you again so much for joining us here today. And of course, for everybody in our community, I want to round things out by reminding you and being annoying, as of course, I'm a great learner of David, as all great teachers and coaches are, of course, repetitive and annoying. So I want to remind everybody that if you would like the guide and exercise from today's training on judgment versus discernment, all you need to do is email David directly, david@dmeltzer.com. Once again, that is just david@dmeltzer.com. And when you email David, if you've already gotten a copy of his most recent book, which is Don't Do Business with Dicks, make sure to let him know so then he can send you the rest of his books completely for free. Sending you a copy, signing a copy, and even pay for shipping, ladies and gentlemen. All you got to do, once again, is email David directly, david@dmeltzer.com. And lastly, we want to invite but not obligate everybody to join us in person as we are on tour over 200 days in 200 cities every single year. Of course, coming into town for our masterminds, our keynote speech, and then adding on what we call a car wash, which is adding on a community meetup, a holding court, interviews, and even one of our VIP dinners. So if you guys would like to join us this weekend as we're going to be in New Orleans for a community meetup, adding on a car wash for Jazz Fest 2026. Then it'll be off to Viva Las Vegas for Office Hours TV show season number 10. Adding on a car wash then again there. We'll be in Los Angeles at the greatest stadium in the world for a podcast day. Of course, adding on a car wash once again with our VIP dinner. Then it'll be off to Madison, Wisconsin, the Bahamas with Bill Walsh and the incredible mastermind group that he has. Then in Atlanta, Georgia with Chad Sandrigan and the Cannonball Moments team. Then back to Viva Las Vegas for Office Hours TV show. And then even over to Austin, Texas for the Aspire Business Tour. So ladies and gentlemen, if you guys would like to join us and get these reminders on where we're going to be, over 200 invitations, but not obligations a year, all you need to do is text us at 949-298-2905. Once again, that is area code 949, next 3 digits, 298, last 4 digits, 2905 for all of the invitations, but not obligations, over 200 every single year. And for our community, both live as we are on every single platform, as well as here in the Breakfast with Champions, the greatest room and community on Clubhouse. We will see you all this Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern time for David's Free Friday trainings. And then, of course, we will be back next Wednesday as well with the Double B, Blaine Bartlett, for the next edition of the Napoleon Hill Institute training. But in the meantime, we want you to enjoy the rest of your incredible Wednesday and this More Good News Wednesday that we are blessed with. And the final reminder is to continue to be more interested than interesting, and be kind to your future self, and do good deeds. Hit it, Gigi.
They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. the happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you.